government repression, according to protesters.
The Electoral Commission disqualified the leading opposition party, Chadema, in April after it refused to sign an electoral code of conduct. Its leader, Tundu Lissu, is on trial for treason, charges he denies. Chadema's chairperson, John Kitoka, said the president faced no genuine opposition.
The ruling party and its government have described as an election, but a majority of Tanzanians do not see it as such. They see it as a performance staged to create an illusion of democratic process, which in fact is not the case.
South Africa's Department of International Relations and Cooperation, DIRCO, has raised concerns over reported atrocities in Sudan following claims that the Rapid Support Force, or RSF, killed hundreds in the Darfur region. The RSF has been engaged in ongoing clashes with Sudanese government forces. DIRCO spokesperson Crispin Piri tells us more.
What we have seen thus far in Sudan is definitely genocidal acts by the armed forces, RSF, the paramilitary force, as well as the corresponding the Sudanese forces, rather. So we really do condemn these actions. The government has since noted that the AU at least has had a Peace and Security Council meeting on these matters, and that is something that we welcome. We really do believe that this conflict will be resolved not through belligerent acts and continuous arming of the various conflicting forces, but rather by decisive action from the African Union, and we think that we are seemingly heading towards such a space.
More than 280 million Africans are facing hunger, and nearly 1 in 5 children suffer from stunted growth due to chronic malnutrition, according to the African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Moses Vilakati. He made the remarks at the AU's Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Programme meeting in Kigali, Rwanda, which seeks to reposition agriculture as a key driver of the continent's development.
Indeed, it is still a huge challenge. If we have got close to 300 million people that are going to bed hungry on a daily basis, it means we have got to up our sleeves and make sure that member states are able to produce. Now, obviously there are challenges that are there. Maybe let me start with the opportunities. Africa is amongst the best of soils that are there right now. Most of African countries, they do have good rains. They do have irrigation. But I think we lack the capacity.
The third anti-corruption working group concluded on Thursday at Kruger National Park in South Africa, wrapping up the G20 technical and ministerial meetings that began on Monday. Acting Director General of South Africa's Department of Public Service and Administration, Willie Vukela, has more.
We've been here since Monday. This is the third working group meeting. We're the first one in Cape Town, second one in Sunset. This is the third meeting. Now, there are critical issues that have been addressed in this meeting. The issue of collaborations with international partners, the issue of involving other law enforcement agencies, including the Interpols, to deal with the issue of developing ethical leadership in public servants, and the inclusive partnership with the civil society, academia, and the business. You know about the B20 involvement, the Youth 20 involvement. The other issues are about the issue of strengthening our measures for asset recovery, which is the key area to deal with the issue of corruption, illicit economy in that regard.
After years of delays, South African crime-fighting authorities in KwaZulu-Natal province are urging the government to complete the installation of jersey barriers along the Mozambique border. The barriers are a key security measure aimed at curbing cross-border vehicle smuggling, a problem that has long plagued the region. Ayanda Mhlongo has more from Manguzi.
Communities in this region have been victimized by organized syndicates for years. Despite the deployment of the military and the police task team in the area, the syndicates have continued to operate with impunity. In 2018, the provincial government set aside an estimated 85 million rand for the installation of jersey barriers along the 25-kilometer borderline. These thick concrete slabs were expected to prevent the smuggling of vehicles across the border. However, in 2022, the project was abruptly halted after 48 million rand had been paid to a service provider for less than half of the work that should have been done. Only 8 kilometers has been completed, and criminals have now shifted their operations to other areas along the borderline that aren't yet fenced.
Almost 90% of satellite-detected methane leaks flagged to governments and oil and gas companies are not being acknowledged, the UN said ahead of the COP30 climate talks next month. Rachel Faber reports.
The International Methane Emissions Observatory, which integrates over 17 satellites to observe plumes, got a 12% response rate from 3,500 alerts from leaks detected across the oil and gas sector. The UN said that shows limited progress from last year's response rate when only 1% of alerts resulted in action to prevent them. Carbon dioxide is the biggest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Methane is the second. Methane stays in the atmosphere for a shorter time than CO2, but it is much more effective at trapping heat. That's why scientists consider cutting methane emissions to be the fastest way to tackle climate change in the near term.
And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Africa Roundup. We'll do this again on Monday on Rise and Shine after the 6 a.m. news.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter?
Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard?
Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126.
And we will call you back.
So you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views.
Share your opinion.
Engage with a community that values your perspective.
Follow us on our social media.
Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za
and get ready to share your views
on Channel Africa,
the African perspective. Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
October marks Cybersecurity Awareness Month, a global campaign that highlights the importance of protecting digital systems and personal information from online threats. In South Africa, technology leaders and industry experts gathered at the Into IT Cybersecurity Roundtable in Johannesburg to discuss how the country can strengthen its digital defenses. Channel Africa's Lebogang Mabange reports.
As the world continues to digitize, cyber attacks are becoming increasingly sophisticated, posing serious risks to businesses, governments, and individuals. At the Into IT Cybersecurity Roundtable, experts explored emerging threats from quantum risks to AI-driven attacks and discussed how South Africa can build cyber resilience in a fast-changing environment. Speaking at the event, executive at the State Information Technology Agency, Ndudule Tsenye, emphasized the growing importance of cybersecurity as digital infrastructure expands.
This is the second year of us really looking into this issue of cybersecurity, and I guess that denotes the significance of cybersecurity. You know, the more we implement all this digital infrastructure, digital services, develop and consume them, obviously the more vulnerable we get, and it becomes important that we then look into protecting ourselves and building the requisite resilience.
The discussion also addressed the role of digital inclusion and access to connectivity in building a secure digital society. Chairperson of ICASA, Motibi Ramusi, noted that while digital access brings opportunity, it also exposes vulnerabilities.
So we know that connectivity underpins access to education, healthcare, financial services, governance, and innovation. Yet, I'm told the studies are saying 2.6 billion people globally still remain offline. Now, if those are offline, then it means they don't have an opportunity to hear us talk about the beauty, the importance of cyber, the aspects of cyber. When people identify that you don't have a proper planning, they take advantage of intrusion.
Ramusi further highlighted South Africa's commitment to bridging the digital divide as part of its broader cybersecurity and inclusion strategy.
As a country, we have placed digital inclusion at the heart of its global program. Why did South Africa think of that? In order to have an inclusive society, you need to find a way of reducing costs to communicate. So one of the pillars is to make sure that once the costs are reduced, then you've got everybody into the networks. Then you are able even to expand your broadband connectivity so that we have an inclusive environment. And why do you do this? Because we've realized that in this country, just like many other countries within the continent, the unconnected still stays in those underserved areas, in rural areas. Those are the people that are vulnerable when it comes to cyber.
Colette Clemens, Regional Sales Manager at 4Scout Technologies, said that while South Africa is making progress, the cybersecurity landscape remains underdeveloped compared to global standards.
Just in terms of where we are from a South African perspective, cybersecurity is still very immature, okay? From a regulatory perspective, if you look at international organizations, there's international government or NGO organizations, okay, that look at cybersecurity and how it impacts both the industry, okay, as well as the citizen or the human being from a human being perspective.
As digital transformation accelerates, experts say collaboration between the public and private sectors will be key to building a safer, more resilient digital future for South Africa and the continent at large. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Pick n Pay Chief Executive Officer Sean Summers has raised serious concerns about South Africa's rapidly growing online gambling industry, warning that it is out of control. He says tens of billions of rands are being drained from the local economy, money that could otherwise support jobs and small businesses. Speaking at an investor presentation, Summers urged the government to consider banning the marketing and advertising of online gambling. Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Samosa has more.
South Africa's online gambling industry has generated approximately $4 billion in revenue in the last year. But what does this say about South Africa and its people? The National Gambling Board acting CEO Lungile Dugwana.
Well, you can interpret it in many ways. Obviously, economically or money-wise, it makes sense in terms of that there have been a notable increase in relation to what we refer to as the gross gambling revenue, as well as on the part of our gambling turnover. It is a good thing on the economic part. But I think that one of the biggest responsibilities we have is that whilst the economy may be doing well, we must make sure that the well-being of its people is not compromised. One of the issues that we must deal with from time to time is the continued education, is the continued awareness, is a continued public awareness to make sure that people are understanding that gambling is not made to be a source of income.
Meanwhile, the National Gambling Board has welcomed a recent Supreme Court of Appeal ruling which held that bookmakers may not offer roulette games in Gauteng unless they also carry a casino license. The judgment effectively bans online sporting betting services from offering casino games through their platforms. Managing Director of Repetition First, Tsepo Matsiba, says online gambling is draining money from South Africa's real economy and consumer spending.
Online gambling is taking a lot of money out of the South African economy, and that's money that should be helping local businesses and help us to create jobs. So when people spend their money betting online, that money doesn't go to local shops, taxis, or service providers. Most of these gambling websites are based overseas, so it profits don't stay in South Africa. They leave the country instead of helping our own economy grow. The sad part is that many people lose this money, and those who do so are those who can not afford to lose this money. So in a sense, online gambling looks like fun, but it's quietly pulling billions out of our economy.
He says banning gambling advertisement could be a positive step in the long run.
So if gambling advertising is banned, it will reduce income for some media companies, websites, and influencers who promote these brands. But that's the short-term pain. In the long run, it will protect more families from financial stress and debt that they cannot afford. Other countries such as Italy and Spain have already done this. They still have a strong media industries, and they've just replaced gambling ads with more positive ones, such as campaigns that promote saving, education, or responsible entertainment. So it is better to lose a bit of advertising revenue than to lose billions to gambling harm.
Could higher taxes and tighter regulation on online gambling help redirect funds into productive sectors? Matseba explains.
In terms of taxes, yes, absolutely. Higher taxes and tighter rules on online gambling can help South Africa. If government increases taxes on online gambling and make sure all betting sites are licensed locally, more money can be used to help people, for example, funding skills training, education, and creating youth jobs.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samos in Johannesburg.
Let's go to Zambia now, where the country has been hosting the 8th Conference on Mental Health and Psychosocial Support 2025 that brought together close to 1,000 delegates from 25 African countries and including those beyond the continent. Organized by focusing on mental health and its impact on young people, the conference gathered dignitaries like members of parliament, traditional leaders, civil society organizations, and cooperating partners like the United Nations that have since affirmed to safeguarding the well-being of children's mental health. Our Zambia correspondent Arthur Davies Sikopo has been attending the Regional Psychosocial Support Initiative organized conference and wraps it in this way.
It was 5 full days of figuring out how young people across the continent can have their mental well-being protected. The conference first set its wheels on Saturday and Sunday with a forum for young people themselves, drawn from various parts of the continent as they deliberated on their matters. Dorothy Agoy of War Child in Uganda confirms children in war-torn areas have suffered severe mental challenges, but sees hope in rebuilding them.
Most children have really confessed to have changed their behaviors. Like in Kampala, we work in the refugee settlements there.
A grade 12 young learner at Munali Secondary School in Lusaka, Zambia, by the name of Blessings, who lives with the condition of albinism, recounts how she has had to deal with ridicule and abuse due to her condition.
I'll just have to take a deep breath in and out. Sometimes I drink a lot of water. That's how I can deal with depression and not putting into consideration the negative things that people keep on telling me over my skin.
For young online and digital safety advocates, Minle Malinga and Dylan Ndlovu of Nelson Mandela Children's Fund of South Africa, they appeal to their peers, parents and guardians on the need to protect young ones in the cyberspace.
We are now exposed to a world where there are a lot of predators in our digital platforms. So we were trying to inform our peers that this is how you can protect yourself.
So when people spread negativity and they comment bad things on your post, it affects your self-esteem and confidence and how you see yourself as an individual. And that affects your mental health, which causes depression, anxiety, and all that.
Zambia's Minister of Health, Elijah Muchima, states that mental health of over 890 million young people on the continent is paramount for development of the region.
Let us outline specific, measurable steps to improve the mental health and psychosocial well-being of our children and young people.
Regional Board Chairperson of REPSI, Gigi Gosne, underscores the need to include children in decision-making positions because their voices matter too.
This gathering is more than a forum, but a collection of our voices and experiences that insists that mental health and psychosocial well-being are not optional, but foundational to social justice.
Members of Parliament from across the continent, through a Zambian lawmaker, Sande Chanda, recognize the need to enact laws that will have a face of children.
In the absence of us harmonizing the existing pieces of legislation, it becomes then very difficult for our health practitioners and our health workers to provide a service to the population that we're talking about, the demographic, that is the young people.
Indeed, all what these children of Africa are asking for is not pity or favors, but to be seen as they are, that they too have a potential to contribute to the world effectively, and they want the world to see them as they are, just like the theme for the year 2025 conference, which has been See Us. Reporting for Channel Africa in Lusaka, Zambia, I'm Arthur Davis, Scopo.
The UK's Prince Andrew, King Charles's brother, will be stripped of his royal titles and will have to move out of his royal mansion. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as he will be known, has come under increasing scrutiny for his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, the late child sex offender, and the monarchy has been concerned about allegations of sexual assault against the prince by one of Epstein's victims. Over recent years, he has been forced to take a back seat in the UK royal family, but this is seen as the final move to completely remove him from royal life. From the UK, John Beaver filed this report.
The pressure on Prince Andrew has been building for weeks. As new allegations and new information have come to light about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, there's been growing public and political sentiment for the royal family to sever ties with him. That is now happening in the form of an extraordinary statement that was released by Buckingham Palace. It was revealed recently that the prince only paid what's known as a peppercorn rent on a royal mansion in Windsor, in effect living there for almost nothing, although he was responsible for upkeep. This statement from Buckingham Palace says he will move out of that residence, and it details how he will be stripped of his remaining royal title, being known from now on as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. There is then a very telling couple of sentences, one saying, "These censures are deemed necessary, notwithstanding the fact he continues to deny the allegations against him," and the statement ends with, "Their Majesties wish to make clear that their thoughts and utmost sympathies have been and will remain with the victims and survivors of any and all forms of abuse." Prince Andrew, as he is still officially known until the formal process to remove his royal title is complete, has repeatedly denied accusations made against him that he engaged in sexual activities with teenage girls. But the UK royal family have decided that they needed to act before their association with him caused any more damage. A recent poll found that more than 90% of Britons had an unfavourable view of Prince Andrew. Critics have argued this should have come sooner. It was back in 2022 that he settled a sexual assault civil case against him out of court. This latest news does not mark the end of the problems, though, for Prince Andrew. The anti-monarchy campaign group Republic have said that they're considering a private prosecution against him. John Beaver, SABC News in the UK.
6:31 Central African time it is. Let's get our news headlines. Here's Dwalane Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, Cameroon's opposition leader Issa Chiroma Bakari has called for protest today as he vows to fight until what he calls the final victory over President Paul Biya. The Zanzibar Electoral Commission, or ZEC, has declared Dr. Hussein Ali Mwengi the winner of the presidential election in the islands. And finally, hundreds of thousands of ultra-Orthodox Jews are rallying in Jerusalem to protest against changes to Israel's legal exemption for religious students from military conscription. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's check in with the world of sports. We get our first full update from the world of sport from Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Asanda. We bet off with cricket news. India booked their place in the final of the ICC Women's World Cup by defeating defending champions Australia by 5 wickets in Navi Mumbai on Thursday. In a tournament defined by bold intent and historic milestones, the hosts rose to the occasion once again, chasing down an imposing 339 to set up a final clash with South Africa on Sunday. The chase was anchored by Jemima Rodriguez, whose unbeaten 127 was a masterclass in clarity, composure and control. She combined with captain Harmanpreet Kaur for a 167-run partnership, the highest ever for India in the World Cup knockout. On to football news. South African Football Association SAFA President Danny Jordan has confirmed that Banyana head coach Desiree Ellis has finally signed her new 4-year contract and can now start preparing for the next Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament. Jordan confirmed the news to the media at the Amajimbo send-off to the FIFA Under-17 World Cup. Jordan says Ellis can now focus on improving the team.
No, I'm happy that everything is settled, and you could see from support for the Under-17, giving them a message of support that she's back. And now they must focus because we have to rebuild Banyana. There are some players that we have to look at, young players, and look at alternatives and build the team because it's not going to be easy. The AFCON is going to have many women teams that's going to be very difficult to beat.
Jordan says there's a need to improve Banyana for the better, not just against the stronger teams.
We are focusing on Morocco and Nigeria. They're not the only two. Ghana has got a strong team. Senegal is coming up. Congo, as we've seen, is coming up. And it's going to be difficult. So we also have to not rest on our laurels. We used to, or we were the African champions, and therefore we relax. They must rebuild.
And finally, the International Olympic Committee, IOC, and Saudi Arabia have ended their 12-year esports partnership after only a year, parting way to develop separate projects. The IOC has been looking into esports for several years, forming a dedicated commission to find opportunities to tap into a younger generation involved with gaming. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Let the good times roll. From the 10th of October, make a note. Channel Africa is stepping into a brand new era with the launch of our upgraded website and app. It's easy, fresh, and always on your fingertips. Wherever you are in the world, Africa's voice is just a click away. The future of Channel Africa. Okay. Goes live from the 10th of October. Don't miss the moments. Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at Partnership at channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And now let's check in with the world of business. What's happening? Tabiso Lehogo, good morning.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Africa's financial institutions have committed to generate billions of US dollars needed to finance the continent's infrastructure development. This pledge was made at the Luanda Summit on financing infrastructure development in Africa. Different sectors on the continent met to discuss possibilities on how to finance big projects in Africa. AU Development Agency NAPIT CEO Nardos Bekele Thomas says that the summit has created almost 44 billion US dollars in investment opportunities, which will position the continent to be able to finance its initiatives.
The TDB and Angola Sovereign Wealth Fund are launching work on the Angola Export and Trade Development Facility, a groundbreaking $1 billion vehicle to stimulate exports, attract regional capital, and firmly position Angola as a central hub in Africa's trade and industrial transformation.
Total Energy's CEO, Patrick Poyane, says that the Mozambique LNG project cost is still $20 billion. Poyane says that the company will be able to restart its Mozambique LNG project quickly with the $20.5 billion budget. This after the company earlier informed Mozambique that the cost of its liquefied natural gas project had increased by $4.5 billion during the 4 years that it remained suspended. Before construction can resume, Mozambique's Council of Ministers must approve the updated budget and project timeline. South Africa's Minister of Transport, Barbara Creecy, says that she is confident that the Cape Town Container Terminal is ready for the upcoming deciduous fruit export season. Visiting the terminal, Creecy says that the investment in new rubber-tired gantry cranes, a ship to short tensioners and over 3,000 refrigerated plug points will make a huge impact on turnaround times at the port. Minister Creecy says that the turnaround for shipment has now been reduced from an hour to at least 40 minutes for trucks to come in and out of the port terminal. Creecy says only 9 of the RTG cranes are operational at the moment, and 9 others will be online soon, following the last 10.
So we have 28 new ones, and some of the old ones are also still operational. And what we've explained is that we're operationalizing these new ones in phases. The first phase was in September, the second phase is in November, and the last phase will be operational at the peaks of the season in January.
The Premier of South Africa's Limpopo province, Poppy Ramathuba, says that reducing the high unemployment rate, especially among the youth, remains a priority. According to the latest statistics, the unemployment rate stands at 35.1% in the province. Ramathuba was speaking at the 5th installment of the Limpopo Investment Conference in Polokwane. The aim of the conference is to raise more than $7 billion in investment pledges. Ramathuba explains.
It's not our responsibility on our own to can be able to create jobs. The jobs are created by men and women who are here, whom are the most important guests of the day, the investors. These are the men and women who are going to make sure that they pledge and build an industry. And immediately when they start we see development. Because when an industry is being built, that is when development is starting. And once development is there, jobs get to be created. Jobs is not about Z83.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he has agreed with the Chinese President Xi Jinping on the trimming of tariffs on China in exchange for Beijing cracking down on the illicit fentanyl trade, resuming U.S. soybean purchases and keeping rare earths exports flowing. Trump's face-to-face talks with Xi in the South Korean city of Busan was the first since 2019. Trump said tariffs on Chinese imports would be cut to 47% from 57%, and that China had agreed to pause the export controls unveiled this month on rare earth metals. China's Commerce Ministry says the pause will last for a year. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,452 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 87. Kenya, 128 shillings 37. In Zambia, 21 kwacha 94. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 real 35. Russia, 79 rubles 55. India, 88 rupees 22. China, 7 yuan 9. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 13 cents. 75 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Gold is trading at $3,998 and platinum $1,596 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $64.42 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoko.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Time for our G20 fact now. Did you know that the African Union and African countries laid the groundwork through regional strategies and initiatives to promote economic growth and investment on the African continent, such as the AU's Agenda 2063, the Addis Tax Initiative, as well as the Programme for Infrastructure Development in Africa, PIDA. This as South Africa becomes the first African country to host the G20 summit. And we're actually right there. October has ended. November is tomorrow. It's already that time. That's our G20 fact this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa. Championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
We invite you to get in touch with us here on Channel Africa by going through going to our social media handles. We are across all platforms, and our handle is @ChannelAfrica1. We'd love to hear your views or questions about our programming. Now, let's take a look at this story. There was a significant jump in the number of businesses being liquidated in September, a symptom of difficult economic conditions. Stats SA data shows the total number of liquidations increased by almost 24% in the month compared with September 2024. Liquidations of companies increased by 16 cases, and liquidations of close corporations increased by 12 cases during this period. Gloria Sifago Musi reports.
The number of businesses winding down and ceasing to exist is on the rise, spelling bad news for employment. In the third quarter of this year alone, the number of liquidations increased by 13% compared with the third quarter of 2024. There was an increase of 3.8% in the number of liquidations recorded in the first 9 months of this year compared to the same period last year. Onika Mushwana of Stats SA.
The number of business liquidations in the South African economy increased by 23.9% year-on-year in September 2025. This represents a rise of 28 liquidations from a total of 117 in September 2024 to 145 in September 2025. The 145 liquidations recorded in September 2025 included 20 compulsory liquidations and 125 voluntary liquidations.
Gareth Creeman, partner at Cox Hears, specializing in business restructuring, rescue and insolvencies, says there are more voluntary liquidations led by business owners in the face of difficulties rather than compulsory liquidations driven by the courts.
When you read the statistics in terms of industries which are hardest hit, generally your financing, insurance, real estate, and business service companies are generally the largest category by liquidations, and obviously that relates to underlying issues relating to soft deal flows, delayed receivables, exposure to broad corporate stress, which cascades into smaller service providers. The next category you find typically, according to statistics, is your trade catering and accommodation. And that again goes down to your load shedding costs, which we had previously before stabilization on the electricity grid, higher input prices, consumer down trading, and obviously viability in terms of operations. And obviously when you get down to trade catering and accommodation, that relates to tourism. So, and it's always obviously seen to be sometimes as a bit of a luxury spend, and people cut back on that.
Crimin's other sectors also taking a hit are construction and manufacturing, mainly due to project delays and delays in payments, energy costs and logistics challenges. Gloria Safakomusi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The 5-day conference on the recognition of prior learning in indigenous knowledge is currently underway in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province. The event brings together universities, communities, and traditional knowledge practitioners to explore ways of formally recognizing indigenous knowledge through education and skills development. We speak now to Mtwana Wiseman Zulu, Acting Director for Knowledge Management for Indigenous Knowledge Systems at South Africa's Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, about the significance of this conference and its broader impact on communities and education. Mtwana, good morning. Thanks for making time.
Good morning and good morning to the listeners. Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure. Talk to us about the significance of this 5-day gathering.
The importance of this event stems from the Indigenous Knowledge Policy of 2004 that was actually adopted by the South African government as a way of recognizing the competencies of our traditional practitioners in various disciplines within the IKS domain. But it also built up from the IK Act, the Indigenous Knowledge Act, number 6 of 2019, which is currently in the process of being gazetted in terms of its regulations. Now, these these pieces of policy and legislation actually affirms the IK and the IKS as a knowledge domain on its own, and therefore it is seeking to recognize the competencies and the skills exactly of different practitioners within these different domains. And these domains, they range from the leadership, the trade, technology, astronomy, cosmology, including even traditional health practitioners. So it's quite a number. You're also looking at the fisheries, the habitat, and the agriculture on food production. It's actually quite a lot. And you could realize that if each of these disciplines carries significant population of practitioners that one are producing the knowledge and producing services within their disciplines, there would actually be a trading in terms of consumers that are interacting with those respective products and services, as well as the practitioners themselves. So each of these disciplines carries a significant number of population behind them. But the reality is, they are not at this point firmly and actually recognized within our national qualifications framework. So that is why we are bringing these type of skills and say it to the country. These are the services that are normally rendered by this type of practitioners. How best can we recognize their competencies so that they are able to play an active role in our society? So it's very, very significant.
Yes. Who's actually attending the conference, and how are communities, universities and government working together during this event?
We try by all means. It's actually not easy to reach out to each and every stakeholder at once. So we're doing it in different phases. At some point, we're working with the University of KwaZulu-Natal, the University of Northwest at this point, as well as the University of Venda. But there are other institutions that are also have indicated interest in wanting to come and work with the department as well as the rest of our stakeholders. So there are different stakeholders that are actually involved. As I did indicate that there are those that represents the traditional leadership as you'd know it, and as well as the other sectors. Sometimes you feel it's not easy to find them until you go back to society where people are. By the way, you also got from our Minister Nzimande, as well as the Deputy Minister and the Director General, have also indicated a new mantra for the department to say that we need to find ways in which we could take science and make it the center to government as well as society. So this program actually responds to those type of mandates as well. So it makes our job much more easier when even our stakeholders are able to come and want to work with government in resolving problems that are faced by the same society.
How does the recognition of prior learning, if we look at it in general terms, that process help people with traditional skills and knowledge gain access to formal education or qualifications?
Okay, it's easy. In terms of our South African Qualifications Authority, there are two types of RPL, which is the recognition of prior learning. One, it's RPL for access that provides access to certain and different opportunities. Then there's the other one that gives you credits. In other words, whatever learning pathway you might have accumulated, it also allows you to progress in other fields, or maybe in other levels. So this type of recognition at this point, we are going to do it in different phases, because disciplines themselves are also different in their nature and their level of development and advancements. Others are still, you'd still find different pockets of individuals working and operating within the sectors, but others are at sectoral level. They're also supported by different legislations. So their level of advancements and development are not the same equally. But also this one, it would allow them in terms of creating new opportunities, one, but two, also giving them access so that they are able to advance. Those that would want to continue in terms of having different qualifications as their basis, they would be able to continue. But those that do not even have qualifications, firstly, their designations must be awarded to them so that they are firmly recognized within a particular NQF level. So it's a matter of starting in terms of awarding a designation and formally recognizing it so that you are able to build from that.
We've seen projects like traditional birth attendance and rites of passage highlighted at the conference. How are these initiatives benefiting local communities?
It's very important because our areas are actually stricken by different infrastructure-related challenges. As an example, one, in terms of traditional birth attendance, I remember we hosted one conference which was historic in its nature in 2019, when we convened the first ever traditional birth attendance conference. How does it benefit for them to be recognized? In a sense that it's not each and every local area that is easily accessible when it comes to road and infrastructure, as well as services, health-related services. So the traditional birth attendants, they are doing actually a sterling job in terms of assisting our rural communities when it comes to those type of services. So affording them and also recognizing the work that they are already doing. Many of us, you'd be shocked to find that we're actually we're a product of those type of services, and probably even the manner in which we were born, it was as a result of traditional birth attendance, and there was very minimal interventions from the hospital or even the clinic on the basis of where we come from. So they are providing actually a real service in real time. The only thing that they require is a sense of recognition so that we are able to blend the services that they are able to provide with the services that is actually provided by our entire healthcare system. Going back to the rite of passage, we are living in a society where there are many things that are happening. So empowerment and knowledge acquisition must always be at the center of at the center of our development and implementation. So the rite of passage program assists our society to groom and develop young girls and young men so that they become useful in the country and they are able to add value, and they become a generation that is able to take up responsibility, one, for protection of society as well as infrastructure and all the services, but they are also able to we are also able to pick up actually excellent pockets of excellence within their childhood, and therefore we are able to nurture them accordingly, because you would have identified them at an early age that they are competent in doing one, or they're passionate in specific areas, and you are able to channel them perfectly well, and then they become leaders in our society. So the leadership development program does not necessarily start at a later stage. It begins at an early age, and therefore you are groomed and you are nurtured quite properly. So it's a very good and excellent program, because it also detract them from being absorbed by different negative experiences in our society, and they are engaged in these type of things, because in normal instances they happen maybe even during schools when they are closed, and so you could identify that those are actually specific times that takes them away from being engaged in negative things, as I had mentioned earlier.
So as the conference progresses, it's a 5-day conference, what outcomes does the department hope to achieve, and are there plans to expand these initiatives across the country?
Thank you so much. So as the conference progresses, one, we had an official opening, as you'd know, in terms of our conferencing, but the rest of other 3 days was actually meant for workshopping. So it's a conference/workshop. In this workshop, that is where we have broken the different disciplines and the practitioners in their respective commissions so that they're able to deliberate, because some of the information that they actually talk about is quite sensitive for it to be shared across groupings that are not part of their respective orders. So we have given them that latitude and also that sensitivity and respect in accordance to their disciplines. So they are engaging on that. What we are hoping to find at the end of the day, we're trying to develop what we call a framework, which is referred to as the norms and standards, because the difficulty, if you are to recognize a practitioner in a field like and maybe in this type of fields, it's that it may not necessarily be easy for you to identify a real practitioner and those that might be claiming, because in as much as we want to recognize the services and the competencies as well as the skills of the practitioners, we've also got an obligation to protect society from misuse by the same practitioners in particular terms, because sometimes the products that they produce in our society, they are meant for consumption, and sometimes they also guide the human development in our society. So society must also be protected from products that may not necessarily meeting particular standards. So in that regard, we are also then expecting that they will be able to produce this framework which separates a real practitioner from the rest of the aspirants ones. It's the norms and standard development as a framework, but you're also inviting them to continuously have these dialogues, because it really connects them and binds them so that they become an interactive throughout. It is also meant that to create these champions across the country, because there are representations that are coming from different provinces in our country, but also regionally, you've also got interest groups and interest friends that would like to join us in the upcoming events and the upcoming workshops. So we are going to be expanding this really. For now, in the previous years, we had worked with only one sector, which was the traditional health practitioners. Now, the traditional health practitioners is also guided by the THP Act, the Traditional Health Practitioners Act number 7 of 2022. Now, that act had also defined only 3 categories, but in this instance, we have expanded to actually close to 16 disciplines, as we highlighted before. So that's the nature of our expansion, and we are going to expand even in other disciplines that they will be helping us to continue to identify, because sometimes it becomes a snowballing, but it also must be controlled within our policy and legislative environment.
Twana, thank you so much for your time. We're going to leave it there for today, and all the best for the rest of that gathering.
Thank you so much. Such a short time, but it's okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Wiseman Ntwana Zulu, Acting Director for Knowledge Management for Indigenous Knowledge Systems at South Africa's Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. You just heard there in that conversation. It is now 7 o'clock Central African time. We enter the second hour of Rise and Shine. This is Channel Africa from the African perspective. We come to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. That's where our studios are. My name is Asanda Beda. In this hour, we take a look at the African Union chairperson, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, having expressed optimism about Africa's future, and also civilians are fleeing El Fasher, the capital of North Darfur in Sudan, as they face extrajudicial killings, rape, and other serious abuses by the Rapid Support Forces. We are going to get into those stories and more, of course. Let's start with our news update at 7. Here is Jwalani Tulongwepe, and then following her is Fikile Lingwati with a snippet of what's happening in the world of sports.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Cameroon's opposition leader Issa Chiroma Bakary has called for protests today as he asked to fight until what he calls the final victory over President Paul Biya. Bakary's supporters took to the streets again in Douala yesterday. At least 23 people have been killed since the weekend. Channel Africa's correspondent in Cameroon, Moki Kinzeka.
Issa Chiroma has also called for protest on Friday. He says on Friday, every Cameroonian, wherever they are, should come out and march and make sure that the victory doesn't finally go Paul Biya way. And also there is information that Paul Biya is also preparing his inauguration, which will likely be on the 6th of November, that's next week. And the day coincides with the 40th anniversary celebration of Paul Biya's party, the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement. So there is uneasy calm in Cameroon, targeted assaults, and there is still a heavy presence of the military on streets on major road junctions.
The Department of International Relations and Cooperation in South Africa has condemned the alleged killings of hundreds of civilians in Sudan's Darfur region, describing these acts as genocidal. Reports indicate that the Rapid Support Forces killed civilians at a hospital in Al Fasher over the weekend. DIRCO has emphasized that the protection of civilians must be top priority during conflicts. DIRCO spokesperson Crispin Piri says they hope the emergency meeting called by the
Weekday
will lead to an immediate ceasefire.
The government has since noted that the AU at least has had a Peace and Security Council meeting on these matters, and that is something that we welcome. We really do believe that this conflict will be resolved, not through belligerent acts and continuous arming of the various conflicting forces, but rather by decisive action from the African Union, and we think that we are seemingly heading towards such a space.
The Zanzibar Electoral Commission, or ZEC, has declared Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi the winner of the presidential election in the islands. Dr. Mwinyi contested on the ticket of the ruling CCM party, which has never lost an election since independence. Zanzibar, a self-governing territory with Tanzania, voted on Wednesday. South Africa's Justice and Constitutional Development Minister Mamoloko Kubai has welcomed the confirmation that the accused in the murder of well-known musician Keenan aka Forbes and Tibelo Tibbs Motswane have withdrawn their appeal against extradition from Eswatini to South Africa. The minister says she is of the view that the withdrawal of Siyabonga Ndimande and Malusi Ndimande's appeal will bring the extradition process closer to being finalized. And finally, hundreds of thousands of ultra-Orthodox Jews are rallying in Jerusalem to protest against changes to Israel's legal exemption for religious students from military conscription. Almost all sects and factions of the ultra-Orthodox Haredi community are taking part. This is what some of the protesters had to say.
People who refuse to go to the army, they take them to military prison. It's not so bad, but it's no. We're a Jewish country. You can't fight against Judaism in a Jewish country. It doesn't work.
He shouldn't have to go to the army because the army is not a place for people who keep Torah and mitzvahs. But now, recently, the last few years, making problems.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jwalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Now, sports headline, Vela Kumalo begs Amajimbos to deliver at the FIFA Under-17 World Cup. And WADA says enhanced games are dangerous and must be stopped. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. Africa at Play with Neto NETO chairman.
I've witnessed something fresh, something exciting, and something very inspirational from the president of the country, William Ruto. Whenever athletes are performing to their best level, he always comes on board to reward those athletes, be it football, be it athletics, and not leaving it up to the sport ministry.
The president realizes that sports is a business, and for that reason, he also reduces the number of people who are jobless, because sports now is such a serious business, and for that reason, commercialization of sports is a major way of improving or increasing employment opportunities for the young people, and that is why the president has been very persistent in trying as much as possible to inspire more sports personalities to reduce the baggage of the people who are struggling to get job opportunities in the country among the young people.
Francis FM Mutegi, our correspondent from East Africa in Nairobi, Kenya.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Central African Time. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
6 minutes past 7, the former African Union or AU chairperson, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, has expressed optimism about Africa's future, saying the continent's development agenda remains on track despite current challenges. Speaking to Channel Africa on the sidelines of the third Kairos public lecture at the University of South Africa, or UNISA, that's in Pretoria, on Thursday evening, Dr. Zuma dismissed fears that the African Agenda 2063 is under threat. She pointed to progress made through initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area and the Pan-African Payment System, which are already being implemented across several countries. She warned that Africa's economic transformation depends on industrialization, energy infrastructure, and free movement of people across the continent. She also voiced concern over recent political unrest in parts of Africa, urging leaders to prioritize peace and development, which she said are inseparable. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe spoke with the former AU chairperson, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma.
Well, I don't think it's facing a threat, because if we look, for instance, at the Africa Continental Free Trade, 49 countries have ratified their agreement, and as part of that, there is a Pan-African payment system that has been developed. 17 countries are already using that payment system. Well, South Africa is not yet, but there are 17 countries that are already using it, which gives us hope. And of course, for it to succeed, we also need to manufacture, because we can't be trading rocks and dust. We need to manufacture, which means we need to have electricity, because you can't manufacture if you don't have electricity. So we need to ensure that there's energy infrastructure. But once you have manufactured, the goods must move freely across the continent, and the people must move freely. There is a protocol that has been adopted of free movement of people, but so far only 4 countries have ratified it. It needs 15 countries for it to come into effect, to be operational. We even launched an African passport. Countries are supposed to issue it to their citizens. But because citizens also sometimes don't know, they complain about visas and so on. But if you were carrying an African passport, you wouldn't need a visa. But there are countries also like Rwanda. If you go to Rwanda, you can get onto a plane now. You'll get your visa at the airport as long as you are an African. Ghana has now joined that. There may be a few others. So it's important to encourage countries to implement what has been agreed upon, because we don't need new policies in Africa. Everything has been agreed. We just need to implement what has been agreed. And if we do, this continent will be a very powerful economically if we do what we're supposed to do.
We have seen a number of elections this year. We've seen Mozambique in December. We've seen Malawi recently. We have also witnessed Cameroon a few days ago. didn't end up well because of the violence that we have seen. The people are not happy with the choice of the candidate. But also now, as we are talking, Tanzania is burning your sister, Samia Suluhu. I've seen some of the reports here that there are issues where the youth have burned polling stations. Some polling stations, elections didn't take place. You, as an advocate for African unity, but also the champion of peace and security in Africa, how concerned are you with these developments?
Yes, I think it's concerning. I hope it won't be sustained because where there is no peace, you can't develop. But equally, you can't sustain peace if there is no development. So it's important to ensure that there is development. Because if there is development, youth are not likely to be told by someone or given something to start doing things. But also, if there is no development and they are hungry and they see opulence across the road, they will protest. So development is very important for peace, and peace is important for development. So we hope that the violence will subside and we will be able to develop countries.
And of course, this is also happening as we are edging closer to the Agenda 2063. Are you even worried that maybe we might not achieve that Agenda 2063, something that is your own architect? You really designed this to ensure that we as Africans, we achieve the Africa that we want. Any concerns that maybe the Agenda 2063, you as a champion of that we might not achieve? But if not, what are other mechanisms that, you would look into to try and see whether we can really achieve this?
It will be achieved. Maybe I'll still be alive. It will be achieved. I think if we just ensure that we take charge of our resources, we beneficiate, we process, we will achieve it. If we train, skill young people are very innovative. If you skill them, they'll be able to do a lot of the things that are supposed to be done. I'm optimistic. You know, I was inspired by our ancestors. In 1945, they met in Manchester, Africans, Pan-Africanists, and some from the diaspora. And one of the resolutions they took in 1945 was that Africa should be decolonized within 50 years. South Africa was decolonized on the 49th year. The only country that is remaining is Western Sahara. Otherwise, they achieved. The thing about planning ahead is that you're able to put structures, you're able to, like now, the Africa Continental Free Trade is part of that. And if that succeeds, then we're on our way. So I'm still optimistic that we will build the Africa we want. Why shouldn't we build the Africa we want? Because the one we have is not the one we want. So we must build the Africa we want. And governments must act, civil society must act, business must act. All of us as individuals, you must go home today and say, how am I contributing to building the Africa we want? If all of us did that, we'll achieve the Africa we want.
That was former African Union or AU chairperson Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma speaking with Channel Africa's Michael Mbewe. It's almost 15 minutes past 7 Central African time. More than 2,400 people have been charged with armed rebellion, insulting and using violence against a public official exercising his duties, and incitement to commit felonies in Morocco. It follows the recent youth-led protests that turned violent. Tracy Bumgard has more.
Of the 2,480 people charged, 1,473 remain behind bars awaiting trial. A stark reminder of the scale of the government's crackdown. It began as a youth-led movement calling for better public services, quickly spread across the country, drawing thousands into the streets. Organizers had urged demonstrators to remain peaceful, but tensions flared and scenes of unrest erupted in several cities. 3 people were killed, dozens injured, and shops and cars left damaged in the chaos. Rights groups have condemned what they call a heavy-handed response by the authorities. The Moroccan Association for Human Rights has denounced the arrests, warning of an escalating campaign to silence dissent. Meanwhile, the Public Prosecutor's Office says more than 400 people have been convicted, receiving sentences ranging from 1 to 15 years, while 34 others have been acquitted. For Channel Africa, I'm Tracy Bumgard.
U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered the Department of Defense, also called the Department of War, to immediately start testing nuclear weapons. The U.S. president made his announcements minutes before meeting China's President Xi Jinping in Busan, South Korea, earlier today. Posting to the social media platform Truth Social, Trump said Truth Social, that's the media platform. Trump said he instructed the Department of War to start testing their nuclear weapons on an equal basis. Showen Bryce Peace reports that the last USA nuclear test happened in September of 1992, and that the United States is among nuclear weapons states yet to ratify the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty.
President Trump posted the surprise announcement that the United States planned to resume nuclear arms testing and that it had more nuclear weapons than any other country, a feat Trump said was accomplished during his first term. But Russia is well established to have the world's largest nuclear weapons arsenal, with the United States a close second. Trump suggested that countries like China would soon be even with the United States, and that because of other countries' testing programs, he had instructed the Pentagon to start testing on an equal basis, a process Trump said would begin immediately. He spoke to reporters on board Air Force One after his meeting with China's President Xi Jinping.
We have more nuclear weapons than anybody. We don't do testing. We've halted it many years ago. But with others doing testing, I think it's appropriate that we do also.
The United States, along with China and Russia, has signed but not ratified the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 1996. The multilateral treaty seeks the banning of nuclear explosions for both civilian and military purposes in all environments. Guo Jiaqin is China's foreign ministry spokesperson.
China hopes that the U.S. will earnestly abide by and respect its obligations under the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty and its commitment to suspend nuclear testing and take concrete actions to safeguard the international nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation system and maintain global strategic balance and stability.
China's last nuclear weapons test was in 1996, Russia's precursor, the Soviet Union, last tested in 1990, and the United States last tested a nuclear weapon on September 23, 1992. Russia also weighed in on the Trump announcement after recent tests by Moscow of a nuclear-powered cruise missile and a nuclear-powered torpedo. Listen to Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov.
We hope that President Trump has been correctly informed on tests of the Buravastnik cruise missile and the Poseidon nuclear-powered super torpedo. In no way can they be seen as nuclear tests.
While there are 9 countries globally with nukes, the vast majority held by Russia and the United States. Hans Christensen is with the Federation of American Scientists.
These 2 countries are the ones that have, by far, the most nuclear weapons. And that has always been the case. So part of it is because of their experience with the Cold War, the role and the arsenals they developed at the time, the strategies, et cetera, et cetera. Nuclear arsenals continue to evolve. They always do when countries modernize. They always improve them in some shape or form. Sometimes they introduce entirely new types. And so it depends on the country. It's not the same across the board.
Since the adoption of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty in 1996, 10 nuclear tests have taken place in India, Pakistan and North Korea, the latter as recently as 2017. Nuclear explosions, be they tests or otherwise, have serious ramifications for the environment due to contamination and negative consequences on human health. I'm Sherman Bryce Pease in New York.
Zilipendwa
na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Leo tujadili kuhusu chipukizi wanaoimba nyimbo za wasanii wengine. Unadhani hili linatokana na nini, Omari?
Nadhani kweli kwamba tukizama muziki ya sasa, hasa wasanii ambao ni chipukizi, kwa kweli kwamba yani kwa hivyo kutoka muziki yao wenyewe, lakini wanakuwa wanataka kuhubiria muziki ya zamani, hizo muziki ya wengine ambao tayari ni hivyo.
Wengine wanadai kufanya hivyo ni kupromote vipaji vyao haraka ili waweze kujulikana. Je, yawezekana kukawa na ukweli wowote au ndio kukosa kabisa kipaji cha kuandika mistari?
Ndio, unaona kwamba msanii anapoazimia kwamba kuchukua wimbo mwingine wa msanii mwingine na kurudia mara mbili sivyo, haionyeshi kwamba yani ndio wanaanza kazi ya muziki aizani, lakini ukiangalia kabisa asilimia kubwa utakuja kuona kwamba wanakosa ile mawazo ya kutunga muziki.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The 8th edition of the AI Expo Africa is underway at the Sandton Convention Centre north of Johannesburg in South Africa's Gauteng province. The 3-day Artificial Intelligence AI Expo, which ends on Friday today, is the largest business-focused artificial intelligence, robotic process automation and smart tech trade event in Africa, uniting thousands of enterprise buyers, suppliers and innovators across the region. Here's Tutongo Beni with more.
The 8th edition of the Artificial Intelligence AI Expo Africa is showcasing real-world case studies to detailed technology demonstrations with the aim of engaging and informing delegates about the current and near-term state of the art, best practices, available technology, deployment challenges, ethical considerations allied to vibrant innovation and startup ecosystems driving the industry within the African continent. Dr. Nick Bradshaw, founder of AI Expo Africa, says the expo has grown in leaps and bounds since opening its doors in 2018 with 700 delegates and now attracts thousands of delegates.
Yeah, look, this is the 8th edition of AI Expo Africa. So we started in 2018 in Cape Town with 700 delegates. And this year is our 8th edition here in Johannesburg, and we had 3,300 registrations and a full house yesterday. So yeah, it's looking like it's going to be another busy day today on the second day. And yeah, we've got 110 exhibitors, half of them are startups. We're running 4 parallel tracks of talks, 15 workshops. Yeah, it's a busy event, and it's great to be back here in Johannesburg doing it this year in 2025.
The program at this event includes a 4-track speaking program, Trade Expo allied to a networking and social program. Bradshaw says they initially thought they would take the event to other parts of the continent, but realized it would be a difficult task and so opted to collaborate with other organizations who host similar events.
When we started in 2018, we were the first major commercial AI event. There was another event called the Deep Learning in Durban, which was mainly aimed at academic and research AI enthusiasts. Fantastic event. And then what we've seen over the last sort of 7 to 8 years is ecosystems and events have now sprung up across many African countries, which is fantastic to see. I think when we originally conceived the idea of AI Expo Africa, we were going to go and take it to different countries. And having organised it for the first couple of years, we realised, no, we're going to stay here in South Africa. It's very difficult to move an event to a different country and to do it successfully. So what we've chosen to do is support and collaborate with other ecosystem builders like Data Science Nigeria, Tunisian AI Association.
Bradshaw further says they have ensured that all spheres of society, including the marginalized, take part in the expo.
We have a youth robotics challenge that's running all day tomorrow. We offer trade show tickets through several communities, like Women in AI, for example. So we gift those tickets to engage underrepresented communities. We've also previously had relationships with a charity that was training young women in townships to help train people about just technology. Now we collaborate with a volunteer organisation called ASIC.
As part of the discussions of the plenary panel titled Sovereign AI and AI for Good in Africa, Will AI Factories and Compute Get Us There? Government Affairs and Public Policy Manager at Google South Africa, Sipho Mtombeni, says a framework is needed in South Africa to protect the citizens online.
How do you make sure it's more inclusive? How do you make sure you have ethical considerations in it? So definitely, I think from our point of view, we definitely do need a framework that governs how, as a democracy, we are going to embrace and use AI in our country for the various different things that we do. Obviously, what we always say is that kind of framework, whatever regulation or whatever framework that we come up with or strategy, needs to have a balance where it does not stifle innovation, but protects against the risks. So we do still need to protect ourselves against the risks of cyber attacks, etc., etc. So.
Meanwhile, Frederick Wenner from the International Telecommunication Union, the United Nations Specialized Agency for Information and Communication Technologies, was also part of this panel and says having standards in place could be the solution in protecting South Africans online.
But standards have a lot of details, and standards could be a very effective way of turning these ambitious words and text into actual detailed standards and protocols and interfaces and make things interoperable, where you have all of those things baked into the standard, and then you can address all of those things you just mentioned.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongo Beni in Johannesburg.
East Africa's largest lender by customer base, Equity Group Holdings, has posted a strong set of results for the third quarter of 2025, with profits surging by more than 30%. The group attributes the growth to its diversified operations across banking, insurance and technology. Daniel Ominde reports from Nairobi, Kenya.
Equity Group Holdings, one of East and Central Africa's largest financial institutions, has reported a net profit of $418.7 million for the 9 months ending 30th September 2025, a 32% increase from the same period last year. Group CEO and Managing Director Dr. James Mwangi attributed the strong performance to diversified revenue streams, improved operational efficiencies, and a robust recovery in the Kenyan banking business. Dr. Mwangi added that a stable macroeconomic environment across the 6 markets where Equity operates also supported the group's solid earnings growth.
We are excited that the countries again we are in make it to the 15 top economies. If you look at Kenya as the number 6 largest economy, we look at Ethiopia, we look at Tanzania, we look at DRC, we look at Cameroon. What does it mean? It means majority of the economies we are in are some of the largest economies on the African continent. They form a bloc, the East African community. So then you look the net trade of the East African economy. It's what it is because it's big economies. Look at what Kenya has done. Everything is green and everything is looking up. The improvement in reducing loss has seen Kenya transform itself from revenue. Efficiency has increased its revenue by 22%. It has increased its non-funded income by 12%. And you can see efficiency ratios.
The group operates through its banking, insurance, and technology divisions, underscoring its diversified business model. News of the strong third quarter performance sent Equity Group's shares soaring to an all-time high of $0.5 on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Daniel Ominde for Africa in Business from Nairobi.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel África. Okay. Adivinha só, a Channel África quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel África está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos Lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Time now to check in with the world of news as we get a snippet. Here's Jolani Tulo Mwepe with news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, Human Rights Watch is calling for compensation for the victims who have become permanently disabled due to injuries sustained during the Eswatini June 2021 unrest. The Zanzibar Electoral Commission has declared Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi the winner of the presidential election in the islands. And finally, the White House in the US has now confirmed that it would be setting up a refugee admissions cap of 7,500 for the fiscal year 2026, the lowest cap on record, that those admissions would be focused largely on white Afrikaners from South Africa. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's check in now with what's happening in the world of sports. Good morning, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Asanda. Again, we kick off with football news. Despite the limited preparations and leaving just 4 days before their opening game against Bolivia in the FIFA Under-17 World Cup, Amajimbo's head coach Vela Khumalo is banking on the quality of his team to carry them through. The South African national Under-17 team left for Qatar last night in what will only be the country's third appearance at this age category in the men's division. The team's preparations haven't been at their best, mainly due to funding issues, but Khumalo says the quality of these boys is going to show.
Look, we are excited that we are on our way out, and we want to thank the association for helping us through, and we hope that we are going to make the country proud. And it was very important that we take these young ones and expose them to the World Cup stage so that their future will be looking good. So we are hopeful, and like I indicated in some media to say, the talent is going to take us through here. Our boys are talented. Other than any other things, I think the talent is going to help us to go through.
Khumalo says it's not just lack of funding that has hampered the preparations of this team, but also the unavailability of some of their key players due to matric exams and injuries. The team is traveling with a 20-man squad instead of 21, as they couldn't replace a player who is sitting for his exams.
FIFA is giving us only 21. We're supposed to have 21, and remember, we are working with the team, with the boys that are at school. So we registered 21, only to find that the other one, Busquets from Sundowns, is right in grade 12. So he was not given the opportunity to come and be part. And we could not replace because it was not a medical issue. The only time we can replace it is when it's a medical or it's a certificate from the doctor to say we can replace.
Some more football news. Lance Davids, former South African midfielder, believes Bafana Bafana have a good chance at this year's AFCON tournament. Bafana Bafana will be one of the teams to watch at the Continental Showpiece, which begins on the 22nd of December and concluding on the 18th of January 2026 in Morocco. Davids believes Bafana will match the likes of Egypt with a heavy European contingent at the AFCON.
No, I think we should not fear anyone. I think we did well also in Morocco against the top teams when we came to the knockout stages. And the good thing about, like I said, if you look at the last quarters, I think it was 5 Pirates and 5 Sundowns. So they've been playing a lot in the CAF, so they've experienced with the top teams. So I don't think we'll be feared, and I think the coach has been really well. I think he's been really loyal to his team, I would say. He's not chopping, changing a lot. So there's a lot of synchronizing, and the team has a good team spirit inside the team.
On to cricket news. India booked their place in the final of the ICC Women's World Cup by defeating defending champions Australia by 5 wickets in Navi Mumbai on Thursday. In a tournament defined by bold intent and historic milestones, the hosts rose to the occasion once again, chasing down an imposing 339 to set up a final clash with South Africa on Sunday. And we end with the head of the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, Witold Banka, has called on the body's American counterparts to act to stop the enhanced games, describing the new event which allows athletes to take performance-enhancing drugs in competition as dangerous and irresponsible. Banka says the world anti-doping regimes had to be very united in their opposition to the enhanced games, and says the United States Anti-Doping Agency had a responsibility to push against it. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa in business on Channel Africa.
The United States was very vocal at the beginning of South Africa's G20 presidency, and this is largely due to strained relations with South Africa at the time, that they were not really keen on participating. Where do they stand right now?
The US is planning to take over the presidency of the G20 next year, and our understanding from them is that they intend to continue to do so, and therefore it is quite difficult then to be in a situation where you are not attending deputies' meetings or discussions during our presidency and then to take over the presidency next year. From a finance track perspective, there has been engagement. We've been working on a communique last week and this week here in Zimbabwe. What's important about that is that it's a consensus document. And so all the members in the room have to agree to the language that is used there. And our US colleagues have been part of those discussions and negotiations.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mokoenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Let's find out what's happening in the world of business as Tabiso Lehoko brings us to speed.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. The National Union of Metal Workers South Africa, NUMSA, in the Northern Cape Province says it will approach the Labour Court to interdict a Kapa mine and stop them from dismissing workers. This follows the decision by the mine to lay off over 350 mine workers. Frustrated workers have accused the Damit mine of lack of consultation and refusing to pay off monies owed to them. NUMSA provincial organizer Nkosikhona Leila says this matter needs urgent attention.
This layoff will last 12 months. It means if the terms of application is not approved, then these workers will be left with no salary for the next coming 10, 11, 12 months. It's going to be a problem.
Africa's financial institutions have committed to generate billions of US dollars needed to finance the continent's infrastructure development. This pledge was made at the Luanda Summit on financing infrastructure development in Africa. Different sectors on the continent met to discuss possibilities on how to finance big projects in Africa. AU Development Agency NAPID CEO Nardus Bekele Thomas says the summit has created almost 44 billion US dollars in investment opportunities, which will position the continent to be able to finance its initiatives.
The TDB and Angola Sovereign Wealth Fund are launching work on the Angola Export and Trade Development Facility, a groundbreaking $1 billion vehicle to stimulate exports, attract regional capital, and firmly position Angola as a central hub in Africa's trade and industrial transformation.
Nigeria has approved a 15% import duty on petrol and diesel. This as the government seeks to protect a multi-billion US dollar investments projects in domestic financing by curbing an influx of cheaper fuel. The measure is part of a broader fiscal reforms aimed at boosting non-oil revenues ahead of planned tax changes in 2026. It follows last year's removal of fuel subsidies and foreign exchange controls. Total Energies' CEO, Patrick Poyane, says the Mozambique LNG project cost is still $20 billion. Poyane says that the company will be able to restart its Mozambique LNG project quickly with the $20.5 billion budget. This after the company earlier informed Mozambique that the cost of its liquefied natural gas project had increased by $4.5 billion during the 4 years that it remained suspended. Before construction can resume, Mozambique's Council of Ministers must approve the updated budget and project timeline. The profile of China's exports is accelerating its shift towards a green development, with low-carbon products becoming a new driving force in trade. The export growth of wind turbines and components exceeded 30% in the first 3 quarters of 2025, while exports of photovoltaic products topped $28.8 billion in value for a further year. Shipments of electric vehicles were more than 2 million units for the first time last year. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,452 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 87. Kenya, 128 shilling 37. And Zambia, 21 kwacha 94. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 35. Russia, 79 rubles 55. India, 88 rupees 22. China, 719. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 13 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Gold is trading at $3,995 and platinum $1,604 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $64.63 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Right, let's take a look at the story now at 7:42 Central African time. And of course, you can get in touch with us on our social media platforms at Channel Africa 1 is our handle. And we'd love to hear your views about our programming, not just here on Rise and Shine, but as Channel Africa, as we bring you news and current affairs from the African perspective. If you just joined us, we still have another hour to go with you as we update you on what's happening in and around our continent. And of course, I'm Asanda Beda. Now, across Africa, Asia and Latin America, a new generation of young activists is redefining democracy, connecting struggles, building movements, and creating new political languages. From the Arab Spring to #EndSARS, #FeesMustFall, and the Gen Z-led protests in Kenya, these movements reflect a shared demand for dignity, justice, and accountability across the global south. In Cape Town, here in South Africa, over 120 activists, scholars and artists are meeting at the South-South Social Movements Convergence. This is convened by Yaga Africa and the Open Society Foundations under the theme Connected Struggles, Many Voices. One of the leading voices at this gathering is Dr. Chukwuemeka Eze, who is Director of Democratic Futures in Africa at the Open Society Foundations, a peace-building and governance expert who has spent over 2 decades working on democratic transitions, mediation, and civic renewal across the continent. Dr. Eze joins us now to discuss how these movements are shaping the democratic future of the Global South. Dr. Eze, good morning to you and thank you for making time.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. This convergence bringing together voices from Africa and also brings together voices from Asia and Latin America under the idea of connected struggles. From your perspective, what makes this moment so critical for democracy when it comes to the Global South?
You see, if you look at what is happening in Global South, it's, in my opinion, a new era. Because amid a very deep fatigue with the identity politics and policies-based system of representation, democracy has become very exclusionary in practice. And the Global South is witnessing the emergence of a new political culture, a new generation of leadership, and new forms of people power. From Senegal to Nigeria, Nepal to Madagascar, what you are seeing is that young people have moved beyond voting to embrace a variety of collective action approaches to advance a new democratic ideal. Mostly striking mobilization around poverty, corruption, police brutality, unemployment, and poor working conditions. So it's not just about now organizing around stolen elections, but on economic justice. And this is now strengthening the power of people, youth people especially, to organize outside of historically identity cleavages and around shared socio-economic values and vision. So the Global South can build more inclusive, responsive, and accountable political governance systems through these young ones.
So let's talk about the protests we've seen from Nigeria to Kenya to Chile. And these protest actions are around different issues, but they do seem to be connected by similar frustrations. What do these movements tell us about the state of governance and citizen trust today?
What that tells us is that citizens are no longer interested in the state telling them what democracy can deliver for them. People are frustrated, people are angry, and for them, because the future belongs to them, they want to shape that future now and immediately. So this kind of connection that is being built around similar issues, and for the first time, these young ones are not just organizing in the urban cities. They are organizing across regions, across continents. They are intersectional in nature. They are intergenerational in nature, even though now led by young women and men. So, because of that kind of similarity in their demands for an inclusive, socially cohesive, right-based, and just democracies rooted in Africa philosophy of Ubuntu, which is reciprocal, mutual, and solidarity-based humanism and dignity. We are now looking at investing in the realigning politics and governance by strengthening the organizational and mobilization power of these diverse intergenerational and intersectional constituencies, such as the youth, the women, the trade union, the activists, the social movement, traditional civil society in peri-urban and rural communities, as well as urban cities. So because of that connection between their demands, it is easy. And then again, because of the digital era that has bridged this gap in distance, it is much, much easier for them now to be innovative and inclusive through the youth-led platforms to expand spaces for organizing and building democratic futures centered on dignity, inclusion, just and accountable societies.
In your experience, I mean, you've long studied civic mobilization. How would you say platforms like social media platforms like TikTok, like X, which used to be Twitter, and others are reshaping activism and participation among young people in the Global South?
These young people are tech savvy, and technology is also helping them to bridge this gap. Yes, we understand that technology is a two-edged sword because it can also breed misinformation, disinformation, and all the likes. But the honest reality is that it has made it much, much easier for them to share experiences, to share knowledge on best practices. So it is no longer that kind of social movement that fizzle away after a while, because the state will always find a way to infiltrate them and buy them over. On the basis of what is connecting this struggle has come to stay. And my opinion is that any of the leaders in the global south that thinks that the youths are still docile, I think is on the wrong side of history. And that's exactly what these young people with a lot of energy and determination is demonstrating across continents, across regions, and across our communities. So I believe that even though technology has its own shortcomings, it is now helping them to share their knowledge and expertise and to build solidarity around these movements. And that's what I think is creating this level of momentum. There is nowhere now in the global south that democracy is not delivering, that the young people are keeping quiet.
So on shortcomings when it comes to technology, you mentioned misinformation, disinformation. There's also surveillance that could be a risk in using those technologies. How can movements protect their digital spaces while sustaining momentum for change?
I do not think I can't remember any venture in our global community today without its own disadvantages. But I think that because of the level of planning, because of the level of knowledge that these people have and their focus on creating a new form of governance, they are also doing their best, knowing fully well that the state can use it against them. They are doing their best to curtail this level of disadvantages and gaps that is created by technology. Of course, we are not unaware of the fact that the state can even infiltrate the social media to tag them as irresponsible or trying to commit act of treason. And that's why the support from Open Society Foundation is trying to ensure that we provide the kind of platform that enables them to continue to align their demands more professionally.
Drawing on your experience with ECOWAS and the African Union, what lessons from peace building and early warning systems could help strengthen democratic resilience in times of protest or in times of transition?
You see, our intergovernmental organizations also need to have some level of retrospection and to ask if they are still fit for purpose at a moment that these young ones are looking up to them to provide the kind of systems and procedures that will enable them have the kind of governance systems that they are looking at. For us, I believe that if you look at all the indicators that make societies to break down, they are all very glaring, not just in Africa, but across the global south. And it is important that this kind of indicators that are being dished out on a daily basis is taken seriously for three reasons. Number one is to use that to begin to develop new normative frameworks that will guide and safeguard democracy in Africa and the global south. Secondly, is that we are already running against time, and nobody wants a country that is going to implode. And thirdly, I believe that it is now time for our intergovernmental organizations to push the envelope for the kind of democracy that they want to see in the global south and especially in Africa. Otherwise, my fear is that if we continue to delay and think that it is business as usual, it will be unfortunate for the kind of investment we have made in our states.
You've spoken about the Africa Facility to Support Inclusive Transitions, or AFSIT. How does this approach support countries emerging from democratic or security crises?
AFSIT is an initiative of the African Union supported by UNDP and partners like Open Society Foundation. The idea is to ensure that countries that are going through complex transitions emerge victorious through the inclusion of citizens in the design of a new governance architecture that will respond to the problems of today. So AFCIT is, in my opinion, a very important tool that enables African Union and its partners to monitor countries that may go through fragility and chaos in terms of its democratic credentials, and to support them to ensure that they include all aspects, all levels of citizens, and have an inclusive transition. And I think that because of the method and the approach of AFCIT, it is a very important tool because it first of all looks at the indicators that could take a country through fragility, but more importantly, also support those who are going through complex transitions, especially those in the Sahel region and other countries on the continent.
Let's go back then to the South-South movement's convergence that's taking place in Cape Town. One of the goals of this is the South-South Movement Solidarity Pact. So what practical outcomes or collaborations do you hope will emerge from this initiative?
Our thinking and our conviction is that, first of all, because we are just providing this platform to enable these young ones to share ideas and compare notes, that at the end of the day, they will build the kind of solidarity and momentum that enables them to reach out to each other. It is also a moment of stock taking, especially of lessons that have been learned since the 2011 North Africa uprising regarding youth organizing, mobilization, and engagement with duty bearers. It is also a moment for critical reflection on the role of new social media, digital tools, and AI in advancing social justice in democratic and non-democratic settings. But more importantly, it is going to build future-facing strategies, co-create tools for civic architecture, cross-border solidarity, and enduring narrative power beyond single protest movements. Now, what is this going to lead us to? It will help us strengthen youth leadership and solidarity across the global south and forge a vibrant community of practice that reimagines leadership, policies, and alternative democratic futures.
So I guess that answers then this final question in terms of what your hopes are about the future of democracy in the global south as the world faces democratic backsliding and growing inequality.
Yes, I think the glimpse of hope that we have is the strength and determination of these young people. They are now the disruptive elements that we are seeing that will look at how to now reimagine a liberal democracy, authoritarianism, and bad governance. And I do hope that with the kind of support that we are providing, this will be sustained over a period of time to ensure that indeed democracy delivers on what the people demand for.
Dr. Eze, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your information, your insights, and valuable analysis on this important topic.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Dr. Chukwemeka B. Eze is Director of Democratic Futures in Africa program at the Open Society Foundations, talking about the South-South Movement's convergence. It's taking place in Cape Town here in South Africa, looking at how movements, hashtags like End SARS, hashtag Fees Must Fall, and all these Gen Z-led protests we've been viewing and witnessing on the continent, how this has breeded or made come to the fore a new generation of youth activists, and how these movements can be better supported, and how they can also strengthen themselves in how they carry out the messages that they carry out. Now we enter the third and final hour of Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa, and we say good morning to you. If you've just joined us. In this hour, we take a look at the UN Security Council setting to vote today on the renewal of its peacekeeping mission in Western Sahara, or MINURSO, just before the current mandate expires. That story and more will be coming up as we come to you live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. www.channelafrica.co.za is where you can connect with us on the SABC Plus app via mobile phones, as well as live streaming on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. My name is Asanda Beda. We hand you over to the news desk now. Here's Dwalani Tulong with the latest.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. A report from the organization's Africa division has found that police fired indiscriminately at protesters who were voicing their discontent over alleged police brutality and the impunity surrounding the death of a university student. Dozens were killed and hundreds left injured during the demonstrations, which started off peacefully. Nomatamsanga Masiko Mpaka, who is the author of the report, says people's lives have been permanently altered, yet no action has been taken.
People are far worse now. I mean, the individuals we interviewed have lost their limbs and therefore are unable to work. Many of them were breadwinners in their families and now they can't work. Some have lost, breadwinners in their family. They've lost loved ones. They've lost sense of certain movement in their arms. They can't work and their lives effectively have altered. And whenever somebody's life is altered, especially at the hands of the government, there ought to be remedies, right? And really that was our concern. And moreover, when we spoke to some of these victims, particularly ahead of the initial start of the research, many of them were talking about how the government wanted to wish away what happened.
Cameroon's opposition leader Issa Chiroma Bakari has called for protest today as he vows to fight until what he calls the final victory over President Paul Biya. Bakari's supporters took to the streets again in Douala yesterday. At least 23 people have been killed since the weekend. Channel Africa's correspondent in Cameroon, Moki Kinzeka.
Issa Chiroma has also called for protest on Friday. He says on Friday, every Cameroonian, wherever they are, should come out and march and make sure that the victory doesn't finally go Paul Biya way. And also there is information that Paul Biya is also preparing his inauguration, which will likely be on the 6th of November, that's next week. And the day coincides with the 40th anniversary celebration of Paul Biya's party, the Cameroon People Democratic Movement. So there is uneasy calm in Cameroon, targeted assaults, and there is still a heavy presence of the military on streets on major road junctions.
The Zanzibar Electoral Commission, or ZEC, has declared Dr. Hussein Ali Mwinyi the winner of the presidential election in the islands. Dr. Mwinyi contested on the ticket of the ruling CCM party, which has never lost an election since independence. Zanzibar, a self-governing territory within Tanzania, voted on Wednesday. The White House in the U.S. has now confirmed that it would be setting up a refugee admissions cap of 7,500 for the fiscal year 2026, the lowest cap on record, and that those admissions would be focused largely on white Afrikaners from South Africa. The White House published the development in a notice on the Federal Registry confirming earlier media reports this week. Sharon Bryce-Peace has the story.
President Trump paused all refugee admissions into the United States soon after taking office in January and passed a separate executive order seeking to resettle Afrikaners who faced racial discrimination, a characterization that's been rejected by the South African government. The White House indicated in its annual refugee determination dated September 30th that admissions would be focused largely on the Afrikaner ethnic minority. In the determination published on Thursday, Trump said his administration would consider bringing in other victims of illegal or unjust discrimination in their respective homelands, while earlier reporting suggested the administration would prioritize bringing in Europeans, although that was not included in the latest refugee plan.
And finally, British Prince Andrew is to lose his prince title and leave his Windsor mansion, Royal Lodge, following weeks of intense scrutiny over his links to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. In a statement on Thursday night, Buckingham Palace said the King's brother will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Andrew gave up his other royal titles earlier this month, including the Duke of York, after facing more questions about his private life. In a posthumous memoir published earlier this month, month, Virginia Giuffre repeated allegations that as a teenager she had sex with Prince Andrew on 3 separate occasions. Andrew has always denied the claims. Reacting to the latest developments, Giuffre's family said she brought down a British prince with her truth and extraordinary courage. Giuffre took her own life earlier this year. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Now, sports headline. Gianni Infantino says his visit to Botswana is crucial for strategic growth. And Vela Kumalo begs Amajimbos to deliver a FIFA Under-17 World Cup. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
At 5 minutes past 8 Central African time, the UN Security Council is set to vote today on the renewal of its peacekeeping mission in Western Sahara, MONUSCO, just before the current mandate expires. The US-facilitated draft resolution is expected to extend the mission for 6 months, highlighting Morocco's autonomy plan and include all concerned parties, that's Morocco, Algeria, Mauritania, and the Polisario Front. Joining us now from France to unpack what's at stake is Dr. Yahya Zubir, Professor of International Studies and a non-resident senior fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs. Dr. Zubir, thanks for joining us. How are you this morning?
Great pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, the pleasure is all ours. Dr. Zubair, the UN Security Council, let's start here, is set to vote on MONUSCO later today. Why is this year's renewal particularly significant compared to previous times?
Well, there was a sort of consensus among the Western powers and some others to impose a sort of solution, to impose which is in a sense illegal, but to impose the autonomy plan of Morocco that it has been brandishing since 2007. In other words, the decolonization issue would have been put aside. The referendum on self-determination would have been put aside as well. So there have been some behind-the-scenes negotiations among the different members, both the P5 and the non-veto powers or representatives in the UN Security Council. And the pen holder, the United States, had issued, or we saw the draft, and the draft was totally in favor of Morocco, dropping all the past, resolutions for the last 50 years, basically, and trying to prop up the autonomy plan. This has not been the case, my understanding. I've seen some of the revisions, and I understand also that there might have been a veto threat by Russia and perhaps even China if that resolution was passed. So there have been revisions, and the last one, the third, I believe, that I have seen is totally different, although it has some ambiguities, but at the same time, it does not set the autonomy plan as being the most important one, the only basis for negotiations. So we are now sort of midway. It suggests that the autonomy plan is just one of the options to be negotiated among the parties through the mediators, and it also suggests that the negotiations would be held in the United States. The U.S. is the pen holder of the issue of Western Sahara at the UN Security Council, and also in the previous draft, the MONUSCO was to be extended by 3 months, but now in the last one, I think we're back to the normal one, which is 1 year, and that is until October 2026. So there have been really, I mean, tough negotiations at the United Nations Security Council. And now we'll see what would happen with the negotiations. You cannot. I mean, the autonomy plan is illegal. I mean, you have a colonial power, Morocco, basically imposing its own proposal that is, uh, governing the Sahrawis, not giving them any institutions because the foreign policy, defense policy, all those would remain within the hands of the monarchy in Morocco. So that did not pass, and that is basically the good news that we have. We'll see if that is what I saw is the really the final version. So that's where we are right now. We're back to sort of status quo, and hopefully with the negotiations, because in the last draft that I saw, it would be the autonomy plan would be just one of the options that would be negotiated. It asks the participants to come up with some solutions of their own, which is in a sense it's a good thing because the Sahrawis too have their voice. They can come up with ideas that would preserve the original plan, which is a referendum on self-determination. If you recall, many years ago, when James Baker was the special envoy, he did have a sort of an autonomy plan, but at the end of a period of 5 years or so, that will be a referendum on self-determination of the Sahrawi people. So that's where we are. It remains to be seen how things go this afternoon with the vote in New York.
So on that point, then, on that call from the U.S. Facilitated draft for all parties to be consulted, how does that shape the UN's role in mediating the conflict, do you think?
Well, hopefully the members would support the special envoy, because until now the special envoy goes to talk to the different parties, but the powers that be, that is France, the United States, were pushing, and the UK as well, since they all recognize the autonomy plan as the only plan, and that is over. Though I suspect that now, or at least I suggest that the members would give power to the special envoy, and whatever is on the table needs to be respected, not just the autonomy plan, but to consult with all the parties seriously, and take into account the referendum on self-determination, and to realize and to repeat once again, which has been repeated, by the way, in this last version, the right of the Sahrawis to self-determination.
How likely will this council be to reach a consensus? And what will happen if it doesn't? As you mentioned, there's France and the US, they are backing Morocco, and then also Russia and China, on the other hand, as well as several non-permanent members, insist on taking a neutral approach.
Well, I believe that with this resolution, we see that the United States, stepped down in a sense, allowing all these changes. So it would be ridiculous now, to go back on the resolutions and no, no, no. The autonomy plan is the only plan that is on the table. So there would be, I believe, pressure from all the members, not only in the Security Council, but at the General Assembly, who would be pushing for this approach, which takes into account, the interests of the Sahrawi people who have been colonized since for the last 50 years, or previously before by the Spaniards and now by the Moroccans.
Let's talk about the stance of the Polisario Front. They're continuing to stress self-determination, and they've rejected frameworks that don't include independence. How might this influence the vote and the broader peace process?
Well, I think in the last resolutions, it did have some impact because it takes into account, it doesn't say independence, but it says, the self-determination of the Sahrawis, so the Sahrawi people. So it is on the table now. It remains to be seen how the France, the UK, and even those who are not in the Security Council, like Spain or Portugal, who have supported this autonomy plan, how they would react to this latest resolution by the UN Security Council. Even in Europe, I mean, these European countries are in violation of their own laws. And the Court of Justice of the European Union had voted several times, or decided several times that that even the products coming from Western Sahara were illegal, and so on. So to change the a decolonization issue into an autonomy proposal doesn't hold water, because you ignore totally the wishes of the rights of the colonized people.
Can Morocco's prioritization of autonomy result in some risks when it comes to the legal and political fronts?
Well, Morocco is the colonial power, and Spain has to play its role, because technically Spain is responsible still to today, responsible for the decolonization of the Western Sahara. So Morocco, of course, is in a position of strength, since it is occupying about 80% of the territory and exploiting not only the natural resources, but also the fisheries and what have you. And I think that the members, the ones who are pushing for the decolonization or an alternative to autonomy, would put enough pressure in Morocco to look into a different option. Whether it would do it, I don't think so. But if the US and the other powers are serious about ending this conflict, they have to give back the rights, to the Sahrawi people.
Do you think Morocco's autonomy plan can realistically satisfy the needs for Sahrawi people's right to
Absolutely not.
self-determination?
Absolutely not. And I don't know if you're aware, there is no content in this offer of autonomy. It's just saying the autonomy plan, the autonomy plan. But when the Sahrawis sit down, when they were negotiating in the past in Manhasset, in New York and all, and they were negotiating with they had direct negotiations with the Moroccans, that when they asked, what is this autonomy? What is the content of this autonomy? And the Moroccans would simply say, no, well, we're not here to discuss the content of the autonomy plan. So there is no really a real effort or willingness to negotiate in good faith with the Sahrawis, because Morocco feels empowered by the recognition of its sovereignty over Western Sahara by President Trump in 2020. So, and the implicit recognition of its sovereignty by Western powers. So it's sort of a neo-colonial approach to the Western Sahara, Luckily, the global South now is cognizant of the fact that this should not go forward because it could happen to other African countries. We've seen it happening today, to Gaza, and it will happen to in other negotiations around the globe.
Dr. Zubair, thanks so much again for your time. We appreciate your insights.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Yahya Zubir, Professor of International Studies and a non-resident senior fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs, joining us there and helping us to unpack the stakes of today's UN Security Council vote on the MINURSO mission and the future of Western Sahara.
Let the good times roll. From the 10th of October, make a note. Channel Africa is stepping into a brand new era with the launch of our upgraded website and app. It's easy, fresh, and always on your fingertips. Wherever you are in the world, Africa's voice is just a click away. The future of Channel Africa goes live from the 10th of October. Don't miss the moments. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Africa's financial institutions have committed to generate billions of US dollars needed to finance the continent's infrastructure development. This pledge was made at the Luanda Summit on Financing Infrastructure Development in Africa. Different sectors on the continent met to discuss the possibility of financing big projects in Africa. The summit has created almost 44 billion US dollars in investment opportunities, which will position the continent to be able to finance its initiatives. Ditaba Tsotetsi is in Angola.
The message was clear. The continent needs to create a market space which will allow trade and investment possible. A 3-day summit in Luanda has urged the African Union member states to increase intra-trade in an effort to generate adequate capital to address the infrastructure challenges on the continent. AU Development Agency NEPAD CEO Nados Bekele Thomas says that the continent is capable of generating the much-needed funds.
We are recalibrating the Presidential Infrastructure Champion Initiative into a decisive problem-solving platform. It will now serve as a direct conduit linking the political authority of heads of state and government to the technical delivery mechanisms on the ground, ensuring that bottlenecks are escalated and resolved at the highest level.
AU Commissioner for Infrastructure and Energy, Lerato Matabuche, says that the summit has taken a resolution to formulate new policies which will enable intra-trade and investment among member states.
From the policy standpoint, in the railways, we did indeed resolve to transform ourselves from being landlocked to being land-linked. Discussions on financing an African integrated and cross-border rail network system reaffirmed rail as a transformative force for trade and integration. Those discussions called for mobilizing innovative financing through blended instruments, green bonds, and sovereign private partnerships. The discussions called for establishing a continental railway agency to ensure interoperability, safety, and efficiency.
Meanwhile, South Africa's G20 presidency has been one of the drivers to champion Africa's agenda. Minister in the presidency responsible for planning, monitoring, and evaluation, Maropene Ramakgopa, says that Pretoria's G20 presidency has been vocal in advancing Africa's priorities.
The cost of capital is what most countries have actually raised, most especially yesterday. The cost of capital is too high for African countries, and it doesn't make sense because when you look at the risk that they are actually raising and what is happening in other parts of the globe, for example, in the Americas as well, Southern America in particular, you would then now find that the risk that they are raising also exists there, but the cost of capital, of raising capital, as you then now would compare the two, does not make sense. So that is what most countries have actually raised, to say that if we don't deal with the cost of raising capital, we are not going to find ourselves being able to fund most of our developmental and economic activities, but most of all, the ability to support and utilize the domestic capital that is already here.
Auda Nepad, head of infrastructure and transport unit, Ibra Wabaho, has commended South Africa for its leadership role through G20 presidency.
It's fair to start by really commending
the South African diplomacy and the leadership in the G20 presidency. This, as African and as African Union institution, I think we should be very proud of it, of the stewardship of South Africa in this G20 presidency in a very uncertain and stormy environment. I think South Africa is showing leadership.
The three-day summit concluded with agreements signed and expected to be implemented to address the Africa's challenges with the focus on infrastructure. Ditaba Sotetsi, SABC News in Luanda, Angola.
Let's move now to Tanzania, and this is where there have been fresh clashes between police and protesters in the country's commercial capital, Dar es Salaam. Police fired tear gas and live rounds to disperse crowds. Demonstrations erupted during Wednesday's vote, triggered by the exclusion of President Samia Suluhu Hassan's two main challengers from the presidential race and growing concerns over government repression, according to protesters. Amnesty International says a police officer and a civilian have been killed in the protests, which are calling for electoral reforms. Now, to get the latest, we speak to SABC correspondent in Tanzania, Isaac Lukando. Isaac, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So fresh clashes are now reported. Yesterday we were talking about several people being injured with clashes between demonstrators and police. How has the government responded to this?
In terms of a formal statement on the clashes, at least in terms of addressing them directly, no. There's been a couple of statements that we've seen from the government. One was addressed to the diplomatic missions in Tanzania, which are mostly stationed here in Dar es Salaam, being updated on the situation. They were talking about the incidences that had occurred, that the security measures that are being taken at the moment are temporary, but also necessary. And this is referring to the fact that most of the public has been asked to stay indoors and also being required to be back indoors in case they leave their houses, to be back indoors by 6 p.m. And in that same vein, government workers have been asked to work from home unless they're essential workers, and also people in the private sector have been asked to look at the possibility of working from home if it is not necessary. So there was relative calm in most places in Dar es Salaam. And also later we also heard from the Chief of Defense Forces, who was saying that they, in conjunction with other armed forces in the country, would be looking at calming the situation, and we're asking the population, the public, to be calm so that things can return to normal. So there are a couple of statements that have been issued there with this regard. And this, of course, comes in the backdrop of continuing results. We saw results of the elections in Zanzibar complete, but also on the mainland we're seeing results continuing to pour out from different regions.
Do we know when we can expect a full result in terms of the vote counting, and when we can expect final results?
Well, in terms of Zanzibar, last night we were made aware by the Zanzibar Electoral Commission of the final results of the presidential race there. Dr. Hussein Mwinyi, who is the incumbent, was declared the president-elect after securing over 440-something thousand votes, equivalent to over 70% of the vote. That is 74.8% of the vote. His closest challenger, Osman Masood Osman of ACT Wazalendo, got 130,000 votes, which is equivalent to 23.2% of the vote. So on the side of Zanzibar, in terms of the members of parliament being elected there and the presidential race, the results came out last night. But because of the sheer size of Tanzania, the results are still trickling in from various regions. So we've been monitoring to see those results. The Independent Electoral Commission told us that within 72 hours, the presidential election results would be out, and that is what we are waiting for. As we wait for more and more regions to come out with the results, hopefully they will be able to complete things in time for those 72 hours after the election.
Internet was disrupted yesterday as well. Has that connectivity been restored? And what are opposition parties saying generally about the status of things?
Well, internet hasn't come back. It came back briefly yesterday in the afternoon. It was a bit patchy, and then it went back off again. We're waiting for internet to be restored. As far as any statements from opposition parties, it's kind of hard without internet access to be able to hear what opposition parties are saying. Mainstream television is mainly streaming the results from the elections from various regions. That is what we're getting so far. We haven't had the opportunity to hear from opposition parties what they're saying. We did hear from Zanzibar, those that were conceding the election after the election results were released. They were talking about the importance of ensuring that going forward, even those that were in the opposition, that they worked with the government to bring peace and development to the islands of Zanzibar and Tanzania in general. That's the best that we heard from opposition parties. So at this point, it's a waiting game to see and hear the finalization of the election results.
Isaac, thanks so much again for your time. We'll leave it there for today.
Thank you.
Isaac Lukando is SABC, or South African Broadcasting Corporation correspondent in Tanzania, giving us the latest there after voting. 8:31 Central African Time. It's time for news headlines. Here's Dwalane Tulo Mwebe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines. Human Rights Watch is calling for compensation for the victims who have become permanently disabled due to injuries sustained during the Eswatini June 2021 unrest. The United Nations Security Council is due today to vote on a resolution stating that genuine autonomy for Western Sahara under Moroccan sovereignty could constitute a most feasible solution to the 50-year-long conflict. And finally, King Charles is stripping his younger brother Andrew of his prince title amid continuing controversy over his links to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's check in with the world of sports. Here's Figile Lingwati to help us get updated.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We begin with the Athletics World Anti-Doping Agency. WADA's Director General Olivia Nigley says Kenya's anti-doping agency, ADAC, will move on to WADA's watch list in an easing of the non-compliant status announced last month. ADAC was warned in September of serious consequences unless the East African nation addressed critical requirements following an audit carried out in May last year. Kenya women's marathon world record holder Ruth Chepngetich was banned for 3 years last week after she admitted to anti-doping rule violations. The Athletics Integrity Unit said last month that things had improved in Kenya over the past year after previously being described as the Wild West for doping. However, including Chepngetich, 20 Kenyans have been banned by the AIU so far in 2025. WADA President Vitold Banka says the Kenyan government had made a strong declaration that it would spend more on anti-doping programs. Despite the limited preparations and leaving just 4 days before their opening game against Bolivia in the FIFA Under-17 World Cup, Amajimbo's head coach, Vela Kumalo, is banking on the quality of his team to carry them through. The team's preparation haven't been at their best, mainly due to funding issues. But Kumalo says the quality of these boys is going to show.
Look, we are excited that we are on our way out, and we want to thank the association for helping us through, and we hope that we are going to make the country proud. And it was very important that we take these young ones and expose them to the World Cup stage so that their future will be looking good. So we are hopeful, and like I indicated in some media to say, the talent is going to take us through here. Our boys are talented. Other than any other things, I think the talent is going to help us to go through.
Finally, cricket news. India booked their place in the final of the ICC Women's World Cup by defeating defending champions Australia by 5 wickets in Navi Mumbai on Thursday. In a tournament defined by bold intent and historic milestones, the hosts rose to the occasion once again, chasing down an imposing 339 to set up a final clash with South Africa on Sunday. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +271 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. 9 to 12 midday Central African Time. On the move with Palisa Tau and Benjamin Mushatama.
Now, when you go to the hospital, there's medical attention that you need, and that's the only experience you're expecting to have. If you are a transgender person, sometimes those experiences can be marred by the demand of trying to understand your gender, your sexuality, and not particularly getting the assistance that you need.
One time, I was sexually abused by someone who used to live next door to my house. So when I went to the police to report, I was in a weave, I was wearing a dress, and when I got there, the police person that helped me said to me, obviously we're gonna rape you because why do you walk around looking like trying to be a woman when you are a man? And after that, the person just walked scot-free.
How do you deal with that? Because there's a double barrel abuse there. So it's not even double barrels, there's kind of multi-dimensional forms of abuse.
I think one thing that I will tell you about trans people is we are strong, not because we want to be strong, but because we don't have an option. It is what it is. Because the struggles that we face each and every day are like unimaginable.
Keeping you on the know and on the move. Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
Let's check in now with the world of business as we say good morning to Tabiso Lehugo.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. The African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Moses Vilagati, says the continent must put concerted efforts to tackle the scourge of hunger. Vilagati says it's concerning that Africa is battling with malnutrition with the vast hectares of land. He has been attending the AU's Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Programme Summit in the Rwandan capital, Kigali. The gathering has brought together farmers, experts and policymakers under one roof. Kailihle Kumalo has more.
The African Union has made a startling revelation. There's almost 300 million people in the continent are facing hunger. The Continental Body's Commissioner for Agriculture, Moses Vilagati, says Africa is battling with a number of challenges, including high food inflation, climate change that is likely to affect food security, and conflicts in certain regions.
The National Union of Metal Workers South Africa will march to National Treasury in Pretoria. The union is demanding that government should stop conducting business with private security companies that are not compliant with collective agreements. NUMSA spokesperson Pagamile Hlubi Majola.
NUMSA is taking this issue to the National Treasury because it has the power to revoke these contracts and blacklist companies that are failing to comply. There are a number of companies that are not complying with the National Bargaining Council for the private security sector. Some of the companies that are non-compliant include companies like Modise Security, Mjayeli Security, Kia, Guard Security, and Urban Ituba Security.
The National Union of Metal Workers South Africa, NUMSA, in the Northern Cape Province says it will approach the Labour Court to interdict Ikapa mine and stop them from dismissing workers. This follows the decision by the mine to lay off over 350 mine workers. Frustrated workers have accused the diamond mine of lack of consultation and refusing to pay off monies owed to them. NUMSA provincial organizer Nkosikona Leila says that this matter needs urgent intervention.
This layoff will last 12 months. It means if the terms of application is not approved, then these workers will be left with no salary for the next coming 10, 11, 12 months. It's going to be a problem.
Nigeria has approved a 15% import duty on petrol and diesel. This as the government seeks to protect multi-billion-dollar investments in domestic refining by curbing an influx of cheaper fuel. The measure is part of broader fiscal reforms aimed at boosting non-oil revenues ahead of planned tax changes in 2026. This follows last year's removal of fuel subsidies and foreign exchange controls. Google's YouTube TV says Disney's networks, including ESPN and ABC, will go dark on its platform after the two companies failed to reach a new licensing deal. In a post on X, YouTube TV says that their contract with Disney has reached its renewal date. Disney did not respond to a request for comment outside regular business hours. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,452 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 87, Kenya 128 shilling 37, in Zambia 21 kwacha 94. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 rubles 35. Russia 79 rubles 55. India 88 rupees 22. China 71.9. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 13 cents. 75 pence British pound, 85 to the euro. Gold is trading at $3,995 and platinum $1,604 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $64.63 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabisolo Huku.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Let's now get into our final conversation for this Friday, where civilians are fleeing El Fasher, the capital of North Darfur in Sudan, and they face extrajudicial killings, rape, and other serious abuses by the Rapid Support Forces, Human Rights Watch has warned. Thousands have been displaced since the city was taken over on October 26th, with reports of famine, restricted humanitarian access, and severe malnutrition among children. Joining us now is Asanda Beda from Human Rights Watch to discuss these findings and the urgent need for international action. Letitia, how are you this morning? Thanks for making time.
Thank you very much.
Can you briefly summarize what Human Rights Watch has documented in Al Fasher since the RSF takeover?
So, over the course of the last 6 days, we have been seeing a quantity of videos coming out filmed by the Rapid Support Forces themselves committing horrific abuses. Now, I think it's important to underscore that what has happened in the last 5 or 6 days had been foretold. For 18 months, the Rapid Support Forces have been besieging the city of El Fasher. Now, this is a town where at the start of this conflict, there was over 1 million people inside of it. And last year already, as a result of the siege which the Rapid Support Forces had installed on the town, but also as a result of its unrelenting attacks on the city and its surrounding, famine had already been declared in the town. So we're really talking about a context of horror for the last 18 months. And then on Sunday, the Rapid Support Forces took over the army garrison. There are reports that soldiers, the Sudanese armed forces, had actually pulled out before, and they moved into the town. And the reports of extrajudicial executions, abductions, particularly of men in the last 5 or 6 days, have been coming out. Now, not only inside the town, but also as people tried to flee. So we, for example, have looked into a series of videos that came out around 8 kilometers from the city, around this big berm, which they had built around. There's trenches and then a berm, a sand berm to stop people fleeing. And we have documented cases of extrajudicial executions by the Rapid Support Forces there, this horrible video of a man in civilian clothes who is clearly injured on the floor, begging for mercy. And the Rapid Support Force fighter who we see in the video says, "We will not give you mercy." And then he shoots the man dead 5 times. There have been a lot of reports from people in the town of Tawila, which is where thousands have managed to flee, but we are very worried that we are really not seeing the amount of people arriving there that should be arriving, given that there were still tens of thousands of civilians in the town of El Fasher. And people in Tawila are just saying that they are looking for loved ones. So many people are still missing. So it is an absolutely tragic, devastating, but predictable situation that we've been seeing in the last few days.
A harrowing account there in terms of the risks and hardships that those who are fleeing are facing on their journey. On the other hand, when they manage to reach their destinations, what kind of risks and hardships do they face there?
I mean, this is obviously something we've been documenting for months now, that the trip itself is terrible, but also so many are fleeing to Tawila, but the town has been completely overwhelmed, especially since the massive RSF attack on the Zamzam IDP camp back in April. This was the biggest internally displaced people's camp in Darfur. Very long history of people fleeing, repeated attacks over the last 20 years, moving into this Zamzam camp. And as people fled, many fled to Tawila, but there is just not the sort of humanitarian assistance which is able to reach there. So I think what is absolutely critical right now, we've seen many reports of condemnations coming out, but what we really haven't seen is any global or regional action. The Rapid Support Forces leadership have not faced any consequences for the serious crimes their forces have repeatedly committed in this conflict. I think this is important to underscore, that what we are seeing now is on the heels of almost 3 years of horrific crimes committed by the Rapid Support Forces in Darfur. In West Darfur, we had documented a campaign of ethnic cleansing by the Rapid Support Forces against the Masalit community in particular. In Khartoum, in Jazeera, we have documented horrific, widespread sexual violence by their forces. And for the moment, the leadership has not faced consequences. So they need to be sanctioned first and foremost. There needs to be actions to make sure that they are held politically, but also criminally to account for their crimes. And the irony is, of course, that just in the last few days, the leader of the Rapid Support Forces has said he will investigate what's happened in El Fasher. But this is something we have seen by the Rapid Support Forces leadership time and again. They have a modus operandi of attacking civilians again and again in their offensives. And then they claim that they just have a few bad apples, that they will arrest them, that they would hold those to account. But this is just smokescreen. They are allowing and they are commanding forces which are committing deliberately crimes against civilians.
Why this lack or little accountability for these crimes? I know you mentioned the steps that need to be taken to make sure that there is accountability. And what does it mean for civilians?
I mean, it means ongoing horror. I mean, I think again, the difficulty, a lot of Sudanese Darfuri activists, a lot of organizations like ourselves who have been warning for the last 18 years that this was going to happen is a sense of despair. Many of the contacts we've been in touch with in the last few days are absolutely desperate by the lack of global reaction response to something that could have been prevented. Now, there is obviously very powerful backers of the Rapid Support Forces, ourselves and other media organizations, other international organizations, including the UN panel of experts, have repeatedly documented evidence of ongoing military support by the United Arab Emirates to the Rapid Support Forces. There are powerful backers who have not been publicly named in any sphere. We repeatedly, again yesterday, the UN Security Council put out a statement condemning what was going on in El Fasher. Positively, I would say for once, they explicitly named the crimes the Rapid Support Forces were committing, but they just name foreign backers. They do not name those concretely who have enabled these forces to continue to commit horrible abuses against the Rapid Support, against the civilians. So in terms of the civilians, is there, it is more displacement, it is more starvation, and it is really complete lack of hope.
Right. Letitia, we're going to leave it there for now. We appreciate your information sharing with us. It's not always great having these conversations with you in terms of the Human Rights Watch and what you pick up, but we need the information and to spread word. So thank you.
Thank you.
Asanda Beda from Human Rights Watch speaking to us about the ongoing mass atrocities in Al Fasher, that's in Darfur, painting a very bleak picture there. It's Friday. I nearly forgot it's Friday. You know what happens on Friday? We get into the world of lifestyle, of the arts and entertainment, and our Channel Africa reporter, Nhlanhla Mahlangu, makes sure that we get into the know in terms of what's happened in the week in this space. So we call this the Arty Beats, and let's go straight to it and listen.
Welcome to this week's segment of the African RT Beats exclusive to Channel Africa, The African Perspective. I am Nhlanhla Mahlangu. In this week's segment, the Princess of Africa, Yvonne Chaka Chaka, honors backing vocalists and session musicians, and the G20 has been called upon to support creative industries. The 5th edition of the BVSM Awards took place in Soweto in Gauteng, South Africa last Sunday, honoring backing vocalists and session musicians. The biannual awards seek to shine the spotlight on unsung heroes of the South African music industry. This year's cohorts, ranging from vocalists and instrumentalists to producers, were active between 2005 and 2010. Founder of the awards, Yvonne Chaka Chaka, says the backing vocalists are part of the music value chain and deserve to be recognized.
I must say that I feel very humbled, and because for me, I think this is God's work. When I started performing in 1985, I think I was carried by the people who were doing my backings, by the people who played the guitar on my music, by the people who played the saxophone on my music. And I soon realized that I could not have made it without these people. And God gave me this vision, to come up with something. So for me to start the BVSM Awards, it was something that I've always thought it was so unfair for me to be in the studio and record, and somebody just comes and gets 150, and that was it, and makes my song sound good. So I'm happy that I've gotten support from different people. I thank them. I thank the judges that I work with. I thank my team, and just to acknowledge these people's work, because there's no frontliner without a backing vocalist or a session musician.
And what are your hopes for these awards going forward?
Well, the awards are trademarked because they've never been done anywhere in the world. I'm hoping for God to give me strength and get people who can buy into this, to say the backing vocalists and session musicians are part of the value chain in the music industry. I want to see this happening in Africa and all over the world. That is my wish. And I hope God can make it happen.
Some of the winners included Bruce Dope Sibitlo, legendary Kwaito producer who co-founded Kalawa Jazzme record label. He has worked with artists including Boom Shaka, Tebe and Bongo Muffin, amongst others. Sungu, a friend who introduced Yvonne Chaka Chaka to the music industry, received a special award.
This means so much to me. This means so much to me. This gives me so much courage. This gives me so much courage and hope and understanding Uguti, why am I still alive? You know, sometimes I'll just stand in the mirror and say, okay, God, okay, this is me, but then what? I'm a very confident person and very believing in God and my ancestors, but this I was not expecting. You know, I didn't expect this, and I really, really appreciate Yvonne. I'm so honored.
The African Union has called on the group of 20 G20 members to support inclusive financing frameworks for the cultural and creative industries. Addressing the 4th G20 Culture Working Group meeting, AU Head of Culture Division Angela Martins said that Africa's creative industries ranging from film, music, fashion and design to digital arts are among the fastest growing sectors in the economy. She says culture is a driver of innovation, employment and sustainable growth. The G20 Culture Working Group was established in 2020 as a permanent forum within the G20 framework to foster dialogue and collaboration amongst member states on cultural matters. Its objectives is to promote culture as a driver of sustainable development, support the creative economy, and protect cultural heritage globally. Dubbed as one of its kind beauty lifestyle event, influencers, celebrities and media gathered at the Woolies Beauty Summer Escape in Hyde Park, Johannesburg to step into a multi-sensory playground where color, taste, sense and sound collided in exceptional ways. Simpiwe Pato, Director of Brand and Marketing, says the event sought to refine the beauty industry.
What we're seeing in the beauty industry is the importance of experience. Experience is very important for consumers to discover brands. Beauty naturally lends itself to discovery. And in the process of discovery, you know, people need to get a better understanding of how well products work for their specific concerns that they might have, be it from a skin perspective, from a hair perspective, whatever the case may be. So that experimentation is very important, and allowing people the platform to do that is, I think, what presents the opportunity in the beauty category. And that's the purpose of this event, is really to give our partners in the media, the influencers that we collaborate with, the opportunity to really experience the breadth of the beauty product offering, from W Beauty, our own locally made brand, to all the international brands that we work with. This is the opportunity to showcase those and for people to really get to know them better and to play and experiment with them a bit more.
That's it from this week's African RT Beats. Until next Friday for Channel Africa, I am Gandla Mahlangu.
All right, and that's how we come to the end of the show here on Rise and Shine. And then coming up is On the Move here on Channel Africa. Benjamin joining us to tell us what can we expect on this Friday. It's the 31st of October. We finished a whole month.
Yes.
How are you?
Yeah, 2025 is about to end, eh?
Yeah, eh?
How was the year for you?
How was it?
Yeah.
I think it was great, actually.
Okay.
It was like, I think 5 times better than last year.
Okay, that's fantastic.
It was more productive. I loved 2025.
I love that for you, man. It's almost around the corner that we're going to wrap things up.
Yeah.
But before that, we know that South Africa is going to host the G20 in the coming month. And today, we usually have a creative day, which is going to stay the same. Just because we're speaking about the G20, it doesn't mean that art and creativity doesn't enter into the world of politics. There's an interesting presentation on exhibition that's presented by the Latitudes Center for the Arts, which has an exhibition titled On Behalf Of. And it's asked the question, who is speaking on behalf of Africa at these particular gatherings? So it's centering the G20 as a platform, but looking at things from a creative art perspective. So I think it's a nice kind of conversation to have, because sometimes when you think about G20, you think it's just about business, economics, just politics. And no, art has nothing to do with it, but we're going to bring in art there.
I'm actually trying to remember if one of the pillars does touch on the world of arts. I know there's agriculture with the G20, there's finance, there's tech.
Aye.
There isn't one for arts.
I doubt.
Not really. I think it should have.
It should have.
Yeah.
Art is in the periphery sometimes. We just use it for our own convenience. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to have a little bit of fun with the G20.
Nice. Do you think we'll have a G20 song coming out of South Africa? Mapiano nyana or something.
Yeah, comes at a small. Do something, man.
Maporisa, where are you? All right, well, that's going to be coming up then on the other side of the news here on Channel Africa. From me, Asanda Beda, and the Rise and Shine team, we'll be back with you bright and early on Monday. So stay tuned then to Channel Africa for the rest of the programming throughout this day. A happy weekend, everybody, and be safe. And try and find time to do what matters the most and regather your mental health so you're strong and ready for taking on this new month of November and a new week. 9 o'clock it is now. Here's Jwalane Tulo Mwepe with your news.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Top stories: Asawa calls for compensation for the victims of Eswatini's June 2021 unrest, and King Charles strips his younger brother of his prince title. Good morning. Human Rights Watch is calling for compensation for the victims who have become permanently disabled